Skylar Henry is back with you. I am joined by Young America's financial coach, Peter Bielagus. Peter, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastically well. Guys, if you are interested in seeing Peter, he will be speaking tonight at the Neesmith Lane building at 6 and 8 p.m., both today and tomorrow.
That's right.
All right. So, Peter, there are a lot of new Eagles here. A lot of new Eagles. You've been doing this for the past 6-7 years?
So this is my 7th year here.
7th year.
Yes.
There are a lot of new Eagles. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was someone who went to college without knowing anything about personal finance, which I think is true of most people in the United States. Most high schools don't teach anything about personal finance, and you go off to college and you borrow money for student loans, and you might get a credit card or a store credit card, and you might have a job. Maybe your parents are giving you some money, but nobody really teaches you exactly how to manage it. And when you go off to college and when you turn 18 years old, your financial life starts. And what a lot of people don't realize is your financial life starts with or without you. If you want to participate in it, that's great. But if you don't participate in it, it's still going on in the background. And if you don't pay attention to it, a lot of these things catch up with you 3 or 4 years later.
If I was just a college student that was struggling with being in debt, I noticed that you say that you don't like to budget. Me personally, every single bank, website, financial aid counselor usually says you have to budget. You have to budget because if you don't budget, then you're going to lose track of your money.
Right.
Why are you against budgeting?
Well, actually, I'm not against budgeting. I just think for many, many people, they don't work. I've read over 300 books on personal finance and interviewed experts, and you're right. Everybody says you got to do a budget. But if you ask the average person, how's your money management going? You'll find most people will say, it just slips through my fingers. I have no idea where it goes. I'm not sure. And I would say to those people, well, you got to do a budget. And they would say, Peter, I've done 5 budgets. I've done Excel. I've done Mint.com. I've done Quicken. I've done all these things. I've done my online bank budget, and it just doesn't work for me. So I started to ask a deeper question, why can't we make budgets work? And I think there are a lot of reasons why we can't, but I basically come up with 3 very simple reasons why budgets usually don't work and how you can combat that before you sit down to do a budget. And I think that first reason is that we write our budgets in la-la land. We write our budgets thinking about what we want to spend and not what we actually spend every day. The second reason is we forget the little stuff. A budget for most people is a list of what they already know. So if you're paying your cell phone bill every month, you know what that is. That's not what hurts you. What hurts you is that bag of chips that you got at 3 o'clock today, and that DVD that you rented because Netflix hasn't come in yet, or that time you dialed 411. Those little things are what throw a budget off, and that's what we need to keep track of. And that brings me to the third thing, which is actually keeping track. Before you just write down a list of what you want to spend, write down a list of what you actually are spending. Write down a list of everything that you spend money on over, say, the course of a week. And if you have that information, if you sort of think about where your money is actually going, then you're in a position to do a budget. To just sit down and write a list of where you'd like to spend money and another list of where money that you already know is being spent, something like a cell phone bill, isn't really that effective. We've got to dig a little deeper to find those little tiny things, and that's what's going to help us.
Peter, I'm a little new to credit. I actually applied for my first credit card not too long ago. It actually came in the mail. I figured I'm a graduating senior, and this is the perfect time for me to start building up a little bit of credit.
Sure.
Because, once you get past that point, it's kind of, if you don't have credit, you really can't do anything.
Life is a lot tougher without credit. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And so what would you say to the person who is just starting out, intimidated by credit, but they need to get it? What would you say to that person as far as how do you maintain it? I know a lot of people say if you pay back your bills every month or pay back the fee every month, you don't have to worry about anything. If you just stay on top of your credit, then it won't come back to haunt you. But there are those certain times where you can't pay it back every month.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is this. Contrary to popular belief, you do not need a credit card in order to build credit. There's something that very few people know about, and it's called a micro loan. And a lot of the smaller banks or credit unions offer this. And it's a very, 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 very tiny loan that is taken out for the sole purpose of building credit. And the way that these loans work is you walk into your bank or your credit union and you say, give me a micro loan. And what they will ask you to do is give them $100. And you give them $100, and then all of a sudden they give you a loan for $100, and they pay your $100 loan with the $100 that you just gave them. And the whole system is automatic. The payments are already there, but it does actually build your credit. And you can't get into any trouble. You can't get in over your head, but it is building your credit. And a little more back to your question, okay, what if I already have a credit card? What do I do? Well, you're right that if you have a credit card and you pay it off in full on time every single month, chances are you're not going to have any problems. 85% of the credit cards in the country have what's known as a grace period, which is a period of time where if you pay the credit card off in full, you're all set. But some of them do not have that grace period, and you want to find out what that is simply by calling the credit card company. But the basic rule is that if you pay it off on time in full every single month, you're going to do okay and you are going to build credit. For those times that you do get a little bit more, you get for whatever reason, okay, I'm human, spring break, everybody's been there, all that kind of stuff. It's Christmas, it's my birthday, it's whatever, Valentine's Day. We get into a little bit of debt. All you want to do is get back to that exact same strategy as fast as you can pay that debt off, do it. If the bill is $50 and you can afford to send $52.78, send $52.78 because those little bits of money really, really matter when it comes to credit card debt. Sometimes adding just an extra $5 to your payment can cut your payoff time in half.
Coming up, I'm going to ask Peter about the dreaded student loans. 90-second break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the WVGS special with Peter Bielagus, Young America's Financial Coach. You can visit Peter at peterbspeaks.com. Also visit his website, www.peterbspeaks.com. We're talking about finances in college. As a graduating senior, I can ask you, Peter, there's these FAFSAs and these financial aid and these student loans that we all love so much when they come this time of the year and refund checks and stuff like that. But a lot of people forget about us having to pay it back after you graduate. There is financial aid and student loans looking at them in the face as soon as they walk across the stage. So how do you build up for that? Do you start to save in college? Do you take some of that refund money that you get back at the beginning of the year and start putting it back towards paying back your student loan right away? What do you do?
Great question. I think the most important thing that students need to do with student loans is the one thing that nobody does. I run into students all the time, and they can tell me how much money they've borrowed. They say, I borrowed $20,000 or $30,000 or $100,000. And those numbers are important. But the number that's really important to me is this number. What is the total amount of monthly payments that I'm going to have to pay after I graduate? So that $30,000 that I've borrowed, is that $200 a month or is that $378 a month? Knowing that number is the key number. Because remember, we don't pay student loans all at once. You're not going to write a check for $30,000. You're going to pay $200 a month or $500 a month or whatever your student loans are. Where students get clobbered is that their student loans kick in 6 months after they graduate. So that student leaves college, they celebrate, they get a job, they get an apartment, they get a flat screen TV, they get a car, they get all this stuff, and then they settle, and then 6 months later, a check comes in or a bill comes in for $300 and they can't pay it. They've already set their lifestyle up without knowing what exactly that number is. And to find that number out is very, very simple. Just walking into the financial aid office and saying, hey, what is right now as of today, what is the amount of money that I will have to pay every month on my student loans. And then you can sort of build your financial life around that. So whatever job you get, whatever apartment you live in, you know that, hey, despite all these numbers floating around, one other number that's coming in 6 months is that student loan bill.
I think that's what one thing that's really a really big advantage being a student at Georgia Southern is that tuition really isn't that high compared to a lot of other schools. You look at the UGAs that are $14,000, $15,000, $20,000. You go to the technical schools, the Georgia Techs and stuff like that, and they're right around the same price. And not even to mention if for a student to go to school out of state, that is $30,000, which will total up to $120,000 by the time a student graduates. So I think that in-state tuition is definitely beneficial, but also coming to Georgia Southern at such an affordable price is a very big advantage as well. Finally, I really wanted to ask you, I know you were talking about living within your means. I've seen a lot of the billionaires. I was reading up on Warren Buffett, reading up on a couple of Bill Gates stuff like that. And what they've said is to live below your means. Now, it's really hard for a person to be extremely comfortable and live below their means. Everybody's always going to want the new gadget. Everybody's always going to want to go out to eat or, to do those entertainment things that we just talked about. And so it's really, really hard to live below your means. What do you say to the sayings to live below your means as opposed to living within your means?
Well, that's a great question. There's a groundbreaking book that came out several years ago called The Millionaire Next Door. And when we think of millionaires, we think of what we see on MTV. We think of the Kardashians. We think of, The Real World, or we think of The Apprentice, and we see how Donald Trump lives, and we think, okay, millionaires and billionaires, that's who they are. But what we forget a lot of times is that, and what this book revealed is that, the average millionaire is doing stuff with their finances that all of us should be doing but are not. The average millionaire saves 15% of their income, okay? 15%. Up until a couple years ago, the average American was actually having a negative savings, all right? So they're doing a lot of these things like clipping coupons and not buying too big of a house, all that kind of stuff that the rest of us are not doing. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, used to drive a pickup truck. Warren Buffett lives in a house that's about the size of the average American home. It's not these homes that we see on MTV Cribs. You won't see Warren Buffett on MTV Cribs.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talk about in my speech is some of the celebrities that we know of that have gone bust, even though they had all the money in the world. And I think one of the important things that I tell people to do is really decide what it is you want and what it is you don't want in life. And I think one of the reasons that I've been successful with finances is that I'm able to answer those questions. One of the things I blow a ridiculous amount of money on is when I travel internationally, if my client will not pay for it, I will pay to upgrade myself to first class. And I can remember standing at the airport ticket counters, and they'll say an upgrade to Japan is $2,000. I will say, no problem, done. And when people hear that, they think, wow, that guy spends a lot of money. He must be really, really rich, and that's just how he gets to live. What people don't see is the other half of the coin. And that other half of the coin includes the fact that for the last 8 years, I have not had cable TV. So while everybody else is paying $60, $70 a month for cable and all the premium channels, I have not had that for the last 10 years. I talk about in my speech the kind of car that I drive. I do not have the iPhone. I do not have all these things that a lot of people had way, way before me. People who make a lot less money than I do had way before me. I didn't have a flat screen TV until about 8 months ago. And so a lot of these things that people have, they don't realize that it's not so much about how much you earn. It's also about knowing this is what I want, and just importantly, this is what I'm willing to give up in order to get it.
All right. Well, that is Peter Bielagus. You can check him out tonight at the Assembly Hall at the Naismith Lane Building at 6 p.m. Also at 8 p.m. He will be available today and tomorrow. Peter, I thank you for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Entertainment Buzz tomorrow from 3 to 6 p.m. We're going to have a lot of giveaways and a lot of fun. I am Skylar Henry. He is Peter Bielagus. Here's Will Smith, just the two of us.